What is happening, boys and girls? Jim here, RC80. All right, so today's project at hand is trying to get a Soldiers of the World figure, a 1/6 scale figure, to fit into this ROC Hobbies FMS Hobby 1/6 scale MB scaler Jeep here. That's Willy's Jeep. Now, supposedly, according to the packaging and the box description on this vehicle, it's meant to fit 1/6 scale figures, most 1/6 scale figures. So, not too sure if the Soldiers of the World figures fall into that gap or not. Supposedly these guys are 12 inches tall. Was initially having some trouble getting our driver figure to even fit in here. He just wouldn't fit. So what I had to do was, at first, I could only get him in on the passenger seat. That was with his boots on. And then I took his boots off and I was able to get him into the driver's seat. And was able to get his butt to touch the chair cushion. And but his head was sticking up way too high. So the next thing I did was took his boots off and basically removed his ankles. Took his feet and ankles right off of him. That way I could slide his boots on a little bit further. The only problem with having his boots or having him going sitting in there barefoot was that you could see his bare feet inside the cab. So I wanted to be able to cover up his bare feet. So took his feet off and then just shoved the boots back on over top of the stumps just to get him on there as far as we could and close the gap a little bit. So we're able to get him in here a little bit easier. Another thing that I had to do was to take his shirt off and open up his shoulder a little bit. That way the shoulder joint moves around freely. So when we hook his arm up to the steering wheel, it'll move with the steering wheel, hopefully. Now, right now, my current project is trying to remove some cushion from our seat cushions. So here's one of our seat cushions right here. I was thinking that this was probably a block of wood in my mind's eye before I took it apart. It just has two screws on the bottom to remove it. Right here and right here on the underside of the body. I'll flip up the body and we can see where those are at. There's one here and there's one here. And on the underside, it has some plastic gusseting. It gets attached here and here. It had a support peg here, a support peg here, another support peg there, another support peg over here. This is foam. And it's kind of glued to that plastic along with around this outer edge. So what I'm doing right now is I bored a little hole in that plastic and then got in there with a pair of pliers and started prying it up, and then got in there with a pair of side cutters, and then got in there with a pair of body scissors. And slowly I've been working my way into removing the bulk of this plastic from the inside here. That way when we put our driver figure in here, we'll have the illusion of the seat, but his butt's going to be able to sag down in here and camouflage it a little bit and make it look a little bit more natural when we have our driver figure in here, since it'll be able to sag out this cushion a little bit more and sit a little bit lower in there without losing that factory look of our seat. So right now I'm going through the pair of body scissors and side cutters and various other tools to remove this plastic. Kids, adults, whoever you are, whenever it comes to working on a vehicle like this, doing a project like this, you are taking that risk upon yourself. If you go too far and you cut something and you ruin your seat, that's your fault, not mine. So whenever it comes to working on your own vehicles, this is just a disclaimer. Whenever it comes to working on your own vehicles, working on RC cars, whenever you decide to work on your car, modify your car, you're taking that responsibility into your own hands. If you mess up somewhere down the line, that is your fault, not the person who's doing the video. If you see a video such as this or another video on some other online source, and you see somebody modifying their RC or some other vehicle and you want to do the same thing, and you mess up somewhere down the line, that's not their fault, that is your fault. It was your decision to modify your vehicle. You mess up, you did something wrong, that's your fault. A lot of these parts you can buy, FYI, and they're not very expensive. So if you do mess up, 10 chances of 1 you will be able to buy a new replacement cushion. So right now, we're in the middle of removing that plastic out of there real quick, just to free up a little bit of space to see if we can get our driver sitting here a little bit lower. And then we'll go ahead here and get our steering wheel centered, make sure everything's all centered, and glue his arm to the steering wheel or his hand to the steering wheel to keep that from going anywhere. So he'll have a good grip on that, and everything will look right as he's posing. Now, another thing I did is I weighed our driver, put him on a scale, and see how much he weighed. So if you're going to put a driver inside your vehicle, you're going to want to weigh him. Now this guy, with the current garb that he has on, just this one little knife and his boots and everything that he's currently wearing, weighs 9.53 ounces right now, just as it is. He was weighing a little over 10 ounces with some of his other stuff that he had on, which is a couple of these little medical bag pouches or ammo pouches that were sitting on his belt, and this canteen. These are all pretty weighty, like solid plastic, so they're pretty heavy, almost gummy plastic, along with his M16, and all that stuff adds up as well for extra weight. Now, once again, he was weighing over 10 ounces. Now he's down to 9 ounces. We need to add 9 ounces of weight to the other side of the vehicle in order to compensate for our driver. That way the vehicle is not leaning off to one side. You want it to ride even. Now, the nice thing about having these cushions come off like that is a spot that we can hide some weight over on the passenger side. Because we can unscrew our cushion, and we can take some lead weight, some lead bars, and lead wheel weights, and stick them in here. And that'll be a good spot to hide a couple ounces of weight right up underneath the passenger side cushion. I do have some lead bars here, not being sponsored by anybody, but these guys right here, these are some lead automotive wheel weights. Tape A Weight is the brand. Tape A Weight. Google it, you might be able to find it or not. Internet search it. So I can break these off into individual sections and double side tape them into place. And Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. So there we go on that nonsense. We're going to add a driver in here. Add a little bit of lead weight to the other side to compensate for him, to balance things out. And hopefully we'll add that lead weight underneath our seat. And hopefully we won't have to add any more. But if we do have to add more, let's move our camera in here. Excuse me for having a camera on a tripod. If we do have to add more, we can always add some over here on the passenger side, right along the inside of the seat, or right along here on the inside of the seat, in between the seat and the body. We can stick some weight in there and just kind of camouflage it in on the side of the body, and you'll never know it's there, essentially. So that's an idea. The only other real good idea is to find another figure and put him on the passenger side seat and just balance it out with another figure instead. That's ultimately the best way to go. So right now, once again, I'm in the process of trimming away our plastic here and using a pair of body scissors. Once again, this foam is kind of glued in here, so you gotta kind of push this down a little bit and separate that a little bit as you go. Trying to make sure that I don't break off our screw down points right there, those posts, because we're going to need those to reattach everything. Once again, this stuff shatters, boys and girls, so you want to wear some safety glasses while you're doing this stuff, because it will shatter on you. Might come out and get you right in the face. I almost got hit with a piece earlier. My first couple of pieces that I cut out of here, when I was basically just ripping them out of here with a pair of angled pliers, angled needle nose pliers. There's some curved needle nose pliers. Excuse me if you guys can't see what's going on here. This is just basically hacking and slashing here. I want to leave some of the cuts along the edges as smooth as I can so it doesn't rip the upholstery, eh? But basically just want to get the bulk of that material out of the middle and around the sides, so that driver's legs and rear end can countersink into the seat. Essentially. Like an old worn out seat is what we want. That's what we're going for here. And if the fabric is coming loose on your seat around the edges, that now would be the time to glue that up before you start trimming. Make sure that's all glued down nice and solid before you start taking plastic out. That way it's more guaranteed to hold over time. Taking a piece of this and just kind of folding it over. This plastic is very brittle. Very brittle. Once again, it snaps real easy. jagged piece cut out of there. Trying not. Ooh, I'm pulling back on our foam a little bit there, dislocating our foam. That might be okay. There goes a piece. Line out. She's gonna get real flimsy here in a minute. Real flimsy. Alright, well, lots of pieces of plastic on the floor. Not perfect by any means, but we definitely got a saggy cushion at this point in time. Just a matter of getting this fastened back down, just like that. Get a driver in here. And now we're gonna have like a real life sagged out cushion, whereas this one's solid as a rock because it's got these plastic studs posting across the bottom and holding it up in the air. And now we can sag this baby out. That's a little bit more realistic right there. Probably do the same thing with the backrest. Pull that off of there and sag it out as well, so the driver can lean back a little bit further in the seat. That might be a little bit beneficial as well for gaining a little bit extra room in there. Alright, so let's get this one reattached real quick, which is these two screws right here. I think it's a 2.5 millimeter or something like that, or 1.5 millimeter, 1.5 mil. And we'll get that put back in place real quick. Just got done charging up the battery. It's somewhat early in the afternoon here, early in the morning. Not too sure what the time is right at the moment. I've been up all night editing the first run video with this vehicle, which was out in the snow. And that was a while ago. That was quite a while ago, actually. Back in January. Or beginning of February, excuse me, beginning of February. Yes, I said I was going to show you where I'm putting these screws. I'll show you here right quick. Let me get this second one started, and then we can point those out to you. So I'm currently editing the first run video. I'm all done editing it right now, but it's a beautiful day. There's no snow on the ground. I was thinking about getting the Jeep back out for his first run in the dirt. I figured, hey, you know, let's maybe mess around and put a driver in it. Because it just didn't look right without the driver in there. Okay, so if we look in here underneath our battery tray area on our Jeep, right under here, these two screws, one there and one there. And that is what removes the chair cushion on either side. Once again, we're going to have to pull that one out over there so we can put some lead weight in on that side. Alright, so you guys and gals seeing what I was doing over here. Got a good view of my elbow right now. And maybe even my armpit if I have a hole in my shirt. This is one of my nicely broken in, comfortable shirts. Alright, we've got that reattached. Should undo the backrest. There's only one screw holding the backrest in place, so I mean, really, should really kind of undo the backrest and attempt that as well. Our driver came with a couple grenades, our Soldiers of the World figure, and I hung his grenades on a string and wrapped them around the mirror, so they're dangling here with his dog tags. Instead of having a pair of fuzzy dice, we got a pair of grenades hanging from the mirror. Yeah, it's nice being able to get the driver's feet going there nice and easy when he doesn't have any feet. When all you have to do is flex the boot around, it goes in there pretty easy. know if he's down any lower or not, boys and girls. I'm not sure if that made a difference at all. I'm not sure if that even made a difference, boys and girls. His butt's still not touching the seat. We might have to take out that rear post on the inside of that seat just to give it a little bit more drop space back there. So I think his back of his butt is hitting on that post. It's sitting on the very back edge of the seat on the cushion. Yeah, it's nice that you can bend the toe in like that and squeeze it past the side of the Jeep. So we're getting caught right on the back edge of the cushion, boys and girls. We got the body undone right now, but right back here is where we're getting caught on this post. That's where his butt's getting snagged. So I think we have to cut out that back post right there. Take a hit for the team. Cut out that back post. Maybe remove a little bit of plastic along this back edge on the square portion, just to get his butt to sag in here just a little bit further. Right now, that's holding us up right there, that rear post. I didn't know if it would or not. This is all kind of hit and miss. Taking a guess at it here. Not sure how this would be with other soldier figures, whether they be a G.I. Joe brand figure or some other high-end 1/6 scale soldier or figure. I've seen some high-end 1/6 scale figures when I was shopping around for this one. I paid right around $35 US for this figure, which was pretty cheap. Because some of the ones I've seen start at like 200 and went up almost as much as the truck itself. Even some were even more than the truck itself, how much it was for this truck. So pricey, no doubt about it. Whoever's collecting those figures is got too much money on their hands, apparently. They're spending that kind of money. I figure. Alright, so one of these rear posts we have to remove. One or the other, and we might have to remove a little bit of material out of here as well, once again, to get his butt to fall in here just a little bit further. Which it's not going to matter. It's at the back of the Jeep. It's back behind this panel. You're not going to see it, so really, the only person that's hurting is you. It's just hurting your pride more than anything else. Alright, well, we're going to take the hit for the team here. Try to cut out the post that looks like it has the least amount of support on it. This one right here. Looks like it's been trimmed and hacked already a little bit excessively, so why not? Why not? We'll hack this one out of here. Start with a pair of side cutters, a little pair of baby side cutters here. Do some nipping. Nip, nip, nip. Cut away. As we mutilate this plastic. Ah! Don't cut your fingers, boys and girls. Good thing these scissors are old and worn out. These things are super, super sloppy. I would have just jammed my thumb just there. Alright, well, we got that part out. We need to open up this back edge a little bit back here so that his butt can fall in this groove a little bit easier. I don't know if I necessarily want to rip this or not. I want to just try to peel this fabric back a little bit. Or cut it from underneath the fabric. We really aren't too concerned with the bottom edge so much as we are with the top edge. Up in here is where we need to remove. Definitely hacking and slashing, boys and girls. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. I'm trying to cut my way in here, basically. Might just notch this out right back here, eh? Ill advised? Yay? Nay? No. There we go. I did it. I gone and did it. No guts, no glory, boys and girls. No guts, no glory. Not that that means anything. Basically just means that you were the fool. You were the first one that was foolish enough to do it. Well, got a flapper back there. I fold that back underneath and hope for the best. So there we go on that. Hopefully we can see that. I'm not looking through the camera so much, but we just cut that whole back panel off. Left a little bit of material on either side. Guesstimating, of course. Not there's no rhyme or reason or any kind of science to this. Probably put a piece of tape or something across the back of here. I think I'm gonna put a little piece of duct tape across the back of this, and kind of hold that down a bit. All right, a little bit of duct tape back there. Keep that seat flap held down. All right, now our seat's able to flatten out across the back here, so we got no worries about our driver's butt compressing the seat. We're down to one screw. As far as just reinstalling hardware. Getting lighter over here on this side. Help balance out that driver figure, I suppose. Alright, well, we've got our one screw attached. Once again, I think we should probably take our backrest off as well to try to maximize our space here, our free space. Sure, dude's boots are wedged on there good. Put a pair of pliers on these things and pull them up, make sure they're on there. A little awkward trying to get these guys in here without breaking the steering wheel, right? Like, it was my biggest concern the whole time, was not to break the steering wheel trying to fit this guy in here. The toes on his boots need to be maybe pried up with something else to put into position. Right, well, he's definitely sitting down lower now. No doubt about that. There's nothing stopping his butt from hitting the bottom of the seat. So he's sitting down lower, I think. I don't know how's it look on camera. How do we look? It doesn't look like we made much of a difference. It doesn't look like we changed a darn thing, does it? We destroyed our seat cushion, and he's still not sitting lower. It's got nothing to do with the backrest. I don't think. What are we hitting on? The seat frame. There's still a little bit more framing underneath our seats, some more plastic hardware that's underneath here. I'd really hate to cut it out of there, but we might have to do that in order to get this guy to drop lower. Or we're stuck with it as it is. I mean, forget about putting a rag top on here, right? Because as soon as you go to do that, his head's going to be sticking up through the roof. So you need a smaller scale driver to fit in here. Now, I traditionally use wrestling figures in my vehicles. A lot of my vehicles, I use little wrestlers to fill the void for a driver. So I've got like the Ultimate Warrior and that Bronco up there, and Rowdy Roddy in my truck, and John Cena in my brother's truck, and we got a female wrestler in my niece's truck down the line there, and I got a couple wrestlers in my TF2 as well, a driver and a passenger. So typically that's what I use as driver figures. We've got one in the Ascender as well, the K5 Blazer. There's another wrestler figure in there. Those guys are usually the perfect scale for those vehicles. But for this one right here, you put a wrestler in here and he looks like a little kid. He's like coming up to here. So it's not even right. So we need something a little bit smaller than this guy. This guy is supposedly 12 inches tall from, you know, the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. Now, once again, I had to remove his ankles just to get him, and his feet, just to get him to fit inside the Jeep a little bit easier. So we saved some room there. We took off half an inch there. But now, once again, we can't get him to sit down low enough. We need to take some meat off his midsection and drop his chest cavity down a little bit lower or something. Because this is still not working out so good. So yeah, I guess we're gonna pull our driver back out of here real quick. Try to. I don't know why he's not sitting down here any lower. Maybe his legs are hitting on this front section. I think his legs are hitting on this front bolstering right here as well. That's terrible. If that's the case, we're not going to have any material holding the seat back on. Trying to get this guy to drop down in here any lower. We might have to cut notches in the back of his legs back here. Take his pants off and just cut some holes back here in the back of his legs so he notches in over top of the seat. You know, so his legs fit in over top of this gap. That might be the only other way of getting this guy to fit in here and drop down a little bit lower. I think it looks a little bit ridiculous with her head sticking up over top of the windshield. It shouldn't be like that in my mind. So let's see what we can do here. I mean, we'll do this off camera, so we're not looking at the guy's bits, but we'll we'll go ahead here and see if we can cut some material out of his legs. We're going to have to, in order to get him to drop in over top of that seat bucket, over that edge. So, yeah, let's pause the camera and return. So we're going to have to make a cut on the back half of his legs, right here and right here. Probably a V on either side, so he can drop down and over top of the ridge of the seat and sit in there just a wee bit lower. So we're going to have to come in something like this. Maybe not quite that far up. Maybe just to about here. Eh? No pun intended. But yeah, right about there. That'd be an EH and an A, but nevertheless. We're going to have to come in and cut up on either side so we can clear the seat. We don't have to come up all the way because we only have like what? A little bit more than a 1/4 inch gap there, about equal to what we have here as far as what I can see. That gap there looks about the same as that gap there. So I think if we just remove up to here, we should be good. Do that on both sides, and we might be able to get him to drop down just a little bit further. Alright, so I've got my guy roughly marked here where I'm going to cut the material off his legs. And I'm probably going to use a grinder. I go right out to the workshop and use a bench grinder and just grind right on through. Might be the easiest way. It sounds like it's hollow. So it might be best just to melt our way through or use a cutoff wheel and try to cut through with a cutoff wheel. So I got to go out to the garage and do that. We'll come back and see what it looks like after we're finished. Well, boys and girls, I've done some major grinding here on our driver figure, on his legs. That sounded bad. That sounded real bad. I took a bench grinder, to his legs, and just ground that material right out of there, and ground some material off his butt. See, he had a little bit of material sticking up off the bottom of his butt, and I kind of ground all this down. This whole area was just polishing his butt. Sounds terrible, but I was trying to wax the booty. No. I was trying to grind all that crap off of there. That's even worse. Grind all that crap off of there. Anyways, I had to remove a bunch of material off his backside. And I don't know. I don't think we can get much more out of here before we start getting into his joints. Might be able to take a little bit more material off of here, but it's getting sketchy. You know, they said it's meant to fit most 1/6 scale figures. You know, I think we have to take more material off of his ankles too. I think we need to cut them back to about here, just to give us a little bit more free play down by the gas pedal and brake pedal, or gas pedal and clutch pedal, because there's no brake pedal. ROC obviously forgot to put a brake pedal in there. But our feet are hitting the firewall back there, so we need to do something about that. But this driver's butt is definitely sinking down into the seat, so there's no worries about that as far as things go. He's sinking down in here, just like we wanted. But his head is still way above the windshield. So we needed to get him to drop down drastically still. Drastically. And there's not too much that we can do to go about doing that. We're going to pull our cushion back off here. And underneath that, there's a little bit of more plastic framing on the seat. We can remove that plastic framing a little bit back here. That's going to sag the back end down a little bit, but it's still not going to do much for our height. I don't know if we can remove our backrest right here for the seat and get that to drop down further. Maybe the guy would lean back a little bit further. That's not going to make a difference though. If he's leaning back further, it's just going to put him in a bad spot away from the steering wheel. Right now he's in a good spot for the wheel with his arm movement, so he can work the wheel. He just needs to sit down lower. We need to take some material out of his midsection. We need to take a little bit of material out of here, like a ½ inch at least, or an inch out of here. Like an inch to get this guy to sit down lower. I don't know what kind of Oompa Loompa you got to be to fit inside this Jeep, but we don't have them. And we need one, so anyway, we got our Soldiers of the World figure here, our 1/6 scale Soldiers of the World figure here. And I'm going to have to take him back out to the workshop, out to the big garage, and throw him back on the bench grinder. And we're going to lose some material here off his ankles. Chop a little bit more material off of down here. Maybe grind his legs down a little bit further too, so we can get his boots to slide on a little bit better. After removing some of that ankle material, it's going to be a little bit tight up in here. So we might have to grind his calves down a little bit, like a pencil sharpener, so he'll fit into the boots a little bit better, now that his legs are getting even shorter than what they were. And see if we can sacrifice removing some more material back here, off the bottom of his rear end, and off the bottom of his legs. And without sacrificing the joints in the movement, and having it to the point of his legs falling off, you know. I don't want to have to glue this guy together to fit him in here. So we'll see what happens, boys and girls. We're going to go out to the garage one more time. Throw this guy on the grinder. Remove some more material around by his rear end here. And off the back edge here. Grind some of this down. And see where we're at after that. I don't think we need to take any more off his legs. I think we got plenty out of there. Alright, before heading out to the garage, I took our little pair of side cutters right here, wire cutters, and just went in around the side of his keister here and trimmed back some more of this plastic. So you can see the gap that we've got here between his legs. We can take this out to the grinder now and remove that much more material off his legs, hopefully. As long as we don't get too close to those joints. And I think we can get in here a little bit further down and grind this down just a little bit flatter back here. Maybe take a little bit more material off back there. So I came in with the side cutters and just removed whatever excess material was up on top there. And now I'm going to go out to the garage and throw them on the grinder and see what I can do about trimming off some of this material across the back half of his legs, so we can get him to drop in maybe another 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, somewhere in there. Well, we're back from the garage one more time. We took our guy's ankles off. We shaved some material on the side of his calves and on the back of his calves, which are hollow, apparently. That way we get his little rubber boots on farther. After chopping off his ankles, we want to be able to slide these on here okay-ish. Not have to fight so much to get those on. His backside. All right, well, we took off as much material as we can possibly take off back here. I mean, we go down any further and we're going to be getting right into that joint. So I took a lot of material off the back half of his gluteus maximus. Trying to keep it as level as I possibly can using a grinding wheel, excuse me. And on a half-horse motor. And ground all that material out. So I don't know how he's going to sit in here now. We'll try to get him in here. He definitely should be sitting lower. Really, I mean, we got his butt trimmed down about as low as we can possibly get him. We got his legs trimmed down so they're clearing the seat without a problem. His butt's clearing the seat without a problem. But his head is still over the steering wheel, over the windshield, isn't it? He's still sitting up there. That's as low as I can get him to sit right there. And we just can't get him any lower. That's terrible. I'm sorry for the naked soldier there. But I really wish we could get this guy to sit lower inside this Jeep. We're just not going to get him to get any lower than this. Not unless we really start cutting off some material in his midsection and gluing them back together. Chopping them apart and gluing them back together. That's the only thing I can really think of at this point in time. Take some material out of here. So, trying to fit a 1/6 scale figure in here. ROC Hobbies, FMS Hobbies, you know, according to your instructions, you say you can fit most 1/6 scale figures in here. They must be the expensive ones. Must be those $200 and up 1/6 scale figures. So I can tell you that this $35 one is not fitting in here so hot. There's no doubt about that. Well, we're going to have to make do. Get him in here as best we can. It's a bummer that we can't get him to fit in here any better than this. With our overall fitment here. But there's not much we can do about it. We need a shorter figure. Need to heat him up with a heat gun and squish him. Just get him really hot with a heat gun and smush him down a little bit. Get him a little bit smaller. Alright, well, I think that's as far as we can take our driver. We're going to put his clothes back on real quick here. We need to put our driver back on the scale and see what he weighs now after removing all this extra material. So we need to get our clothes back on our driver real quick. Throw him on the scale, see how much he weighs. He was 9.35 ounces earlier, 9.35 ounces. So we'll throw him on the scale and see what he's looking like right now. Alright, so we just re-weighed our character here, our figure, fully clothed. He went from 9.35 ounces down to 7.82 ounces, 265.4 grams down to 221.6 grams. So we lost a little bit of weight there. It's always good to know that you're losing weight. That means that's less weight we have to put on the other side to compensate for the driver. So we need to come up with 7.82 ounces of lead weight, or 221.6 grams of lead weight to put in on the passenger side. And we're going to put that right in over here underneath the seat on the passenger side. Hopefully we can fit all that in there. So I guess the first thing to do would be to gather up that much weight in lead and see how much space it actually takes up before we go ahead here and put it in here. So we'll go ahead and get our driver slid back in place for the moment. We need to glue his hand under the steering wheel. We need to center the steering wheel, make sure it's all good to go before we do that, and then go from there. So we'll turn on the vehicle, get our steering wheel centered with our transmitter. That way we know where his hand's going to be at and how much throw we're going to need for his shoulder or arm to move left and right with that steering wheel. And yeah, get our lead weight gathered up and ready to go. See how much That's 7.82 ounces. How much space that's going to take up inside our seat area here, and how much overflow we're going to need to go around the outside or whatever to counterbalance it. But at least it's not as much as we had to deal with previously. So we definitely lost some weight with our character, which is good. Our driver figure. That's always good to lose a little bit of weight there. The less top-heavy your vehicle, the better. You're sacrificing weight. Whenever you add a driver figure to your vehicle, you are sacrificing weight. There's no doubt about that. So, try to get our guy resituated here as best we can. We're going to have to fasten this person in place at some point in time. Somehow or another. Whether we hot glue him to the seat or just let gravity hold him in, really, because we're not planning on rolling this vehicle over, so hopefully he stays in there. But with his hand glued to the steering wheel, that might pull him off the seat, you know, as he's moving. So we might have to fasten him somehow to the seat. We can always screw him to the seat. Right through the bottom half and right up into the top. And run a screw right into his butt with a drywall screw or something, if worst case scenario, to hold him in place. So we'll get this truck fired up real quick, get our steering wheel centered where it needs to be centered, and see where we need to put our hand on the wheel. Alright, this is 221.5 ounces of lead weight. Couple lead bars over here, so that is all the lead weight that we need to put in there. We have 221.6 as our character, 221.5, close enough. Close enough right there, without going over. We also have our ESC on this side and our receiver on the other side, so it's probably a little bit heavier on this side just because of the ESC, really, in all reality. So, I mean, really, that little minor bit of weight discrepancy shouldn't be all that big of a deal. So, there's our weight right there. We're going to go ahead here and get our passenger seat removed real quick and then see what we got to do or what kind of room we have to work with in there with putting that lead weight, installing that lead weight. So removing the two screws once again on the underside of the seat. One high, one low. We pointed those out earlier. Yeah, they're both high. This one's, you know, an inch away from the other one. And lower down. One's here and one's here. They're both pretty close to each other. Alright, well, there we go. There's our seat, and that's what it looks like, boys and girls. Look at all that gusseting in there. So I broke out all these pegs and stuff and poked a hole in here and just started ripping out plastic. So we're going to start laying in lead in here. We might remove some of these gussets just so we can get that lead to lay in here flat. So we'll probably do that. We'll probably cut these guys off real quick. All but these two. We need to reattach our seat with these two. Then we'll lead this baby up. We've got our lead seat assembled. Our leaded seat. It kind of looks like a lithium-ion battery pack for a cell phone. But there's our leaded seat. And that fits in there quite well, really, boys and girls. Spin our Jeep around here. Sits in here quite well. It's weighty, no doubt about that, but there we go. And we've got plenty of room for our other lead weight. This is the leftover weight that we have to add, which is 91.2 grams of lead weight that we need to add in here still to balance this guy out. So I just need to find a spot for this lead weight. I can put it behind the seat. There's actually plenty of room right behind the seat back here, behind the seat cushion in the back of the seat rest. We'll pull our phone off the camera, off the tripod there, so we can take a peek at that. Right back in this area, there's plenty of room to put a strip of lead weight back there, but it's kind of visible, so I might try to put a strip in here somewhere, or maybe on this front lower floorboard area. Not too sure. Really, it's pretty visible no matter where you go with that lead weight. So we need to try to find a spot for it. I'd like to put it underneath the seat, but I don't think we're going to be able to get any more material underneath the seat before it starts sticking up. that. So yeah, we can't get any more under there without our seat sticking up in the air. Another thing I had to do was trim off our little plastic tabs on top of this panel. There's like 3 little plastic nubs that stick up, so I had to use a pair of side cutters and knock those down as well to give us a little bit more clearance to get our seat panel put in place. So our seat panel, nice and heavy, fits in there beautifully. We need to get that screwed in place. We just need to stick our other lead weight down here somewhere. Oh, it fits nicely along the bottom of the floorboard right down here. So maybe we'll squeeze it in down there somewhere where it can't be seen. Alrighty, we've got our lead weight stacked 3 high here for the passenger side block. This is going to slide right up against the back of this firewall back here, or back against the back of the chassis, and drop straight down in. So it's going to ride right here, essentially, right in this area. I'm going to put some green paint in here after the fact, or just never look down there. And that's where we have our lead weight hidden. So we still need to attach our seat. Pull the camera off the tripod real quick and we can take a peek at our lead weight. There she is, all stacked up right down there in that little holler. And it's doing okay right there. So we'll get our seat screwed down real quick here, and meeting adjourned as far as the lead weight goes. Just a matter of getting our driver situated and all powered up and whatnot, and seeing where he's sitting at, or where the steering wheel needs to be, more or less. Where did we put the screwdriver? There it is. Prop rod. And grab a couple screws. Our seat is still sitting in place. Since it's heavily weighted, it wasn't coming off that body or out of those locators. Screwed into plastic, boys and girls. Fine thread screw going into plastic, so be mindful of that. Extra mindful. Once again, this Jeep has been upgraded to all new electronics. We got a Hobbywing 1080 over here, ESC, a Spectrum SR 415 4-channel receiver, separate on-off switches for our headlights and for our taillights. Duratrax Onyx 6000 milliamp 2S LiPo, and everything's running off of XT90s. Custom recessed LED taillights in the back of the Jeep. And now we've got our driver figure put in place. Alright, so we need to get our steering wheel centered here first and foremost and kind of get that taken care of. Get my transmitter turned on and get our truck plugged in. Okay, well, truck is powered on. Get our body kind of set down roughly where we need it to be. And we want to get our guy's hand on here. Not just one hand. We don't want 2 hands on that wheel. We just want 1 hand on that wheel. And we need to see how much his shoulder needs to move, or if his arm is even going to move with the steering wheel. He seems a little tight. We might have to break his shoulder off right up here and put a spring in on either side. And just let it kind of be connected that way, if this isn't going to work out. Let's see here, I'm going to put my transmitter over on this side. I'm just going to grip the steering wheel with his hand ever so gently. Maybe we'll fold down the windshield and just see what happens here. It's like torquing the steering wheel. Yeah, I think we're pull the steering wheel out trying to work this guy's arm. It's the first time I've ever hooked up an arm to a steering wheel. So I'm guessing at all this stuff, boys and girls. So I'm thinking that we need to put a spring in here somehow, in between one point and another, and glue his hand on here and let our shirt do the camouflage of making it look like his shoulder is intact, much like our pants are making it look like his legs and butt are intact. And go from there. His hand fits on the shifter alright. His hand reaches the steering wheel alright. Looks fine with the windshield down, as far as scale appearances go. We just need to get his shoulder loose. So we need to do some work on the shoulder. We'll come back and take care of that. Alright, so here's what I've got so far. Our guy, I kind of ripped his arm off the shoulder, off its connection point, drilled out the connection point. In the process of doing that, was able to split his body in half. And the pins kind of came loose and I was able to pull everything apart. So I drilled this out a little bit to the diameter of a spring that I had. This is actually a spring out of a bottle of Great Stuff foam insulation out of the trigger, out of an empty bottle of insulation. And I pulled the spring out of the trigger, stretched it out a little bit, drilled out the inside of this guy's arm, wedged that spring down into his arm. I'm going to put the other half right up here into this guy's chest cavity. We'll open up his chest cavity a little bit here, so we can feed this in here. And I'm going to try to pinch it closed to a point where we've got a little bit of slack here, a little bit of wiggle room. And not too much, but let's try to guesstimate here. Right about here. And this will go to our steering wheel. And now his arm's got all kinds of room to move around freely, being attached with the spring. Our driver is all good to go. We've got a little bit of duct tape holding his chest cavity back together. We've got a spring once again in his shoulder, so we should be okay to hook up onto the steering wheel. Not have to worry about any kind of adverse arm movement holding the steering wheel back and creating issues there. So get our guy slid back in here again. And once we get him into position and hooked up to where he needs to be, I'm actually going to run a screw right in through the bottom where we're missing that one screw on the seat, where I cut away that bracket or that post off the bottom of the seat, and just run a drywall screw right up through that hole and right into this guy's backside and anchor him right to the vehicle so he can't go anywhere. So that'll probably be the next step, is to anchor this guy in place so he can't go anywhere. And then we'll get his arm on the steering wheel and fix our shovels and whatever else just came apart here. Alright, well, we got our driver set in place right up there, and we got ourselves a nice self-tapping drywall screw right here. We're going to run through this top seat hole. That was a seat hole that was on the top for the seat cushion. We're going to run through the top seat cushion hole on the drill. And I'm going to try to hold this guy at the back of the vehicle, right where I want him, and run this thing home. He's not going to like it. I don't know if it's going to get a bite on him or not. I'm going to switch out to a hand driver here so I don't overdrive this. Not being sponsored by anybody. You see names of drills and things of that nature. It feels pretty secure, really. Yeah, he feels pretty secure. I don't know how far his butt's sagging down into the seat or nothing or anything, but feels pretty solid. Hopefully it doesn't interrupt with our battery. I think we'll be alright. Take a look at the underside. Once again, here's the only screw that's holding our seat cushion in place, or was, and now we've got this one going back up into this other slot, into our driver, holding him in place. And these two right here that are holding our package of lead in place underneath the passenger side seat, at least until we get another driver or a passenger to sit on that side and balance things out. But man, a whole lot of hacking we got to do to get that driver in place. We got him set in place right now. He's not going anywhere. He's definitely in there. And we just need to get his hand attached to the steering wheel. And another hand resting over here on a shift lever somewhere, and we should be straight as far as things go. I mean, we can't get him any further down into the chassis. I mean, we got a screw pulling him down, going into his backside. So, I mean, he's screwed to the chair, screwed to the chassis. And, yeah, so we can't get him to sit any lower than that. Not without really seriously sacrificing the looks of the truck, you know, and getting rid of our seat cushions altogether, and just leaving the seat frame in place, and cutting away everything else so you can drop this guy down even lower. And then it's going to get to a certain point where it's not going to look scale. So I don't know. I'm not sure on this one. But there he is for the moment. We need to get his hand fastened still. So we'll try to get his hand fastened. It's still early in the afternoon. And I'm not going to jinx myself, but I want to get this thing out on the adventure course, so we'll see what happens here. Oh, I'm sure this is going to be the totally wrong way of going about this. I wish I had a better blowtorch. I do have a better heating gun, or I have a heat gun around somewhere. Hooked up to my soldering iron I could use. But it's definitely the wrong way of going about this nonsense. Trying to get this guy's hand to take a form around the steering wheel. So I need to kind of hold it in a form and heat it up. It's so small. It's going to be tough to do. Either that or just kind of slowly heat up his knuckles and burn my fingers at the same time when I'm trying to get his fist to collapse, wrap around the steering wheel. You can heat up the inside of his hand. Kids, have your parents do this for you? Parents, have a professional do this for you? Trying to get his hands grip tighter so I can glue it to the steering wheel easier. Oh, that's a real pain. It's not really doing nothing. Those hands are too darn flexible. They're not staying closed. Either that or I'm just not getting it nowhere near hot enough. Don't know what to attach his hand under the wheel with. I'm at a loss, boys and girls. His hand's not really conforming to the wheel very well. No doubt about that. Use some double-sided tape maybe and try to secure it to the wheel. Yeah, maybe double-sided tape, I don't know. That's a tricky one. Alright, I got a piece of double-sided tape folded over in his hand, between his fingers. Like he's got a tape knit going on there. See if we can get his hand on here somewhere. It seems pretty darn janky to me. Pretty darn janky to me, this whole little setup right here. Alright, well let's plug her in and see what happens. See if he holds onto the steering wheel or if he rips the steering wheel off the stem. See if this guy's turning the steering wheel or not. Or if he's gonna turn the steering wheel or not. Oh, hey, oh, easy buddy. No. Too much lag to work his shoulder apparently. Doesn't like that. No, it does not like that at all. Apparently, the steering wheel setup is pretty janky. And doesn't have that much strength. So, yeah. Gooey Hand McGee is not going to work. Does the steering wheel still move on its own? Oh, it's a little bit loose, a little bit out of sync there. Wow. What's going on here? I don't know, we might have just broke something. Oh, no, okay. No, it's coming loose. The steering wheel's coming loose. Well, that sucks, boys and girls. We got some steering wheel misgivings here. Well, alrighty, boys and girls. I think we've progressed about as far as we can possibly progress at the moment here with our steering wheel situation. Having a couple problems. One problem is that we're having an issue with getting this guy's hand closed down far enough to be able to grip the wheel without having a bunch of free space in between. Wondering how to attach this guy's hand to the wheel. Trying to get his fist to close up a little bit tighter so that gap won't be as bad between his hand and the wheel. I might have to hold this closed with a pair of vice grips and heat this up with a heat gun and just get it nuclear hot and hope that it conforms. Otherwise, I think we might have to use some kind of epoxy to hold his hand to the steering wheel. Now, another problem that we're having right now is with our steering wheel free spinning from on the stem down here. So our stem is spinning and our steering wheel is sitting still. So I'm not too sure what's attaching our steering wheel to the stem, but it is spinning freely. So there we go. I'm turning it counterclockwise, and it's getting looser. So hey, let's just keep on spinning it. And there we go. We've got a threaded rod, grub screw, going into our plastic steering stem. And we've got a threaded insert here, bronze or brass threaded insert on the inside of our plastic steering wheel. Alright, so we just learned something new there. That was our next main problem, is that our steering wheel was spinning on top of the stem, or the stem was spinning inside the wheel. So what we need to do is Loctite this down, or glue this down. So that's not going to go anywhere, the steering wheel. That could cause a problem with our stem later on, with having to remove that stem if we need to remove that stem for any reason. Not too sure on how the whole setup is down here between the servo and that stem and how sturdy that is. So we'll have to pop the body here real quick and take a peek at that. Ultimately, we might need to replace this stem with a threaded link. I just used like an old link off of RC car, and hook the steering wheel to the end of that, so it'd be a little bit more solid. But I suppose the steering wheel is just as fragile as our stem is at the moment. A couple of burn marks there. So as far as our fragileness goes, the fragility, even if we switch this up to a metal stem down here, it might just break the steering wheel instead. But I think we'll be alright. I mean, the guy's shoulders held in there moves with a spring. Or I've got a spring in his shoulder, so it's pretty easy moving. So I think if we put just a little bit of epoxy on his hand, get it held to the wheel, a little bit of Loctite, maybe some Go Red and You'll Be Dead Loctite on the stem instead of blue Loctite. Normally you use blue Loctite because it's you can get things undone. Red, it's a little bit difficult to get things undone sometimes. But it's either that or use some adhesive in here, some Proline tire glue or something on that to glue it to the stem. Next step would just be to take a piece of double-sided tape and put it in the palm of his hand so it sits on the shift lever over here a little bit better. But otherwise I think we're all set right there as far as that goes. So yeah, boys and girls, I think we just need to put a little bit of Loctite on here, a little bit of super glue or something on there, not being sponsored for names, and get our steering wheel more attached to attached a little bit more securely to the stem. Heat up our fist here with a heat gun and see if we can get that to close up. And put a little bit of epoxy on that to hold it to the steering wheel, and we should be good to go on that nonsense. So there we go on that driver. We've got him sitting as low as we can possibly get him to sit in the vehicle. There's just no way, no way that we can get this guy to sit any lower in here. Once again, this is a Soldiers of the World figure, not being sponsored by anybody, but it's a 1/6 scale figure. And these were kind of mass produced. I'd almost assume that it would fit into this Jeep. Now, Soldiers of the World, boys and girls, these guys actually make a lot of other military stuff besides figures. They make like little little tent setups here where they got a tent and some barricades and a clothesline and things hanging up. They also have Jeeps. They've got a camouflage, or a military Jeep. A Willy is not a camouflage, but a green olive drab military Jeep that looks just like this, along with a white Jeep, like snow camo white, that looks identical to this, identical. But it's just, you know, a roller, just a plastic toy with no components, you know, to actually drive around. So it doesn't have axles or shocks or anything like that on there, but just a push toy, essentially. But it looks just like this, and they've got their figures sitting inside it. So you would think, once again, that this would be a compatible figure for this vehicle as far as things go. But once again, he's a 1/6 scale figure. FMS/ROC Hobby says that this fits most 1/6 scale figures, so he must not fall within that most category. He must fall somewhere in between. Ultimately, I think we need to take some meat out of his chest cavity, or heat him up with a heat gun and squish him down and try to shrink him. You know, just put a heat gun on his chest cavity and just get him nuclear hot and just try to smush him down a little bit, you know, and scrunch him down a little bit so it'll fit in there a little bit better. But at what point does it get to where the driver starts looking like an Oompa Loompa, you know? It doesn't really fit the vehicle scale-wise. So yeah, anywho, we got his butt shaved down as much as we possibly can. We took a bunch of meat off the bottom of his legs. We shaved the seat and gutted this whole entire seat out. His butt is literally sitting right on top of the floor pan here, floor pan of the chassis. And he's got a screw going right up through his gluteus maximus and into his spine, holding him directly to the vehicle. So literally, he cannot get any lower than he possibly is right now. That's as low as he could possibly get, once again. So there we go, boys and girls. A 1/6 scale figure. He is installed. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. We're almost done with the steering wheel portion, but that's not necessarily included on this video. The main video is focusing on installing this guy into the vehicle, which he is. We did put our corresponding counterweight on the other side with our seat by gutting out the seat, lining it with lead on the inside, and then putting our extra lead that we needed over here in the running board side of the body, down here in this kick panel, to keep that secure, or to balance the weight. So There we go on that. He is installed. Only thing we really need to do next, boys and girls, once again, is attach our wheel to our stem with some Loctite or super glue or something, and epoxy our hand to the steering wheel. I mean, we could try to get our fist to close up just a little bit further. I'd like to get this to close up just a little bit further, but that might be tough. He's just pretty flexible. He doesn't really want to bend very well. So we might not be able to get him to close up. We might just have to put a gap of epoxy on there or something and cross our fingers that it holds. Alright, so let's pop our body real quick and see what that steering stem setup looks like on the underside, so we can at least judge how strong this is going to be in the long run for long-term reliability and things of that nature. So let's go ahead here and pop our body. Alright, well, I've got our Jeep laying down sideways here in the hood, or body lifted up as far as I can possibly lift it up here. Checking out our steering wheel setup here. So there's our little micro servo going to the bottom of our steering stem. And there is just an M3 right here holding our little plastic horn going to our linkage down here. So I'm not sure if this has actually got a horn on there, if that's threaded like a servo horn is or not. Unsure on that. But I don't know how strong it is right there, boys and girls. That could be a weak point right here. And might need to get modified. And then it might have to get custom modified. Like I said, if we used a link, an axle link for a shaft, for a steering stem shaft to go between point A and point B, with a threaded rod in the end, we have to find a way to attach a servo horn to the end of that, whether it's epoxy or something. It's got to sit in here somewhat level and solid. Once again, sorry. Like in between bushings or something to keep it from walking around on us, moving up and down vertically and side to side. So I'm not sure what that's fitting through on the inside here. I know we do slide it through a collar right here on the side of the steering stem. Right down there, just sliding through that collar. So that is keeping it somewhat vertically, horizontally stable. So yeah, not too sure how strong this is going to be, boys and girls, down here. A little connection point down there. Ultimately, we might have to unscrew the body from the chassis and separate this to see what it looks like. We're not going to be able to separate it with the body attached to the chassis. We'll have to take that off of there in order to do that, which isn't all that difficult. It's just two screws, one right here and one on the other side, and disconnect your lights from the loop, and you're good to go. And your servo from the loop, and you're good to go. So yeah, there we go. That's what it looks like, boys and girls. I think what we're going to do today, we're not going to mess with that today, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we're going to leave that as it is. And we're just going to go ahead here and put a little bit of double-sided tape on the palm of this guy's hand and get it stuck to the shifter. Or maybe not, maybe we'll just leave it sitting on the shifter. And we'll see if we can get it to shrink his hand down a little bit further and glue his hand to the steering wheel. And we'll call it good. Alright, well, using a Robo Grip pliers, not being sponsored, and blowtorch method, I was able to get his fist to close down a little bit further. So I'm clinching up his fist a little bit with my hand as best I can, just to show you guys how I'm doing this. I'm using the Robo Grips on here just because they grip pretty good. Like that. And I'm using a torch, brandy torch, to heat his hand up. Ever so slightly. He's got burnt knuckles. He's going to look like he was EOD. Got injured disposing some ordnance. Oh, Burnt Knuckles McGee here. Burnt Knuckles McGee. And yes, AR-15 or M16 attached to the side of the chassis here while we're looking at it. I used a piece of double-sided tape, small little square on the back edge of the stock to hold the stock to the chassis. And this is just kind of resting behind the mirror here. Quick, easy reach, you know, for the driver. Real-time scenario, you'd want to have a quick, easy reach on his AR or his M16, but at the same time, you wouldn't want your M16 hanging on the outside of the chassis. Back in the day, these things weren't exactly the most reliable, especially in the Vietnam era. Probably better off an AK-47 back then as far as reliability went. Alright, so did we get his hand to close up a little bit? Yeah, a little bit further. A little bit further. He's definitely got a tighter grip, that's for sure. It's a little bit better on the wheel. Compared to how it was. But I think we need to get that a little bit tighter. Still not quite tight enough. This rubber just does not want to bend, boys and girls. This does not want to conform very well at all. No matter what you do to it. And there's really not a good way to get a hold of this thing either. Heat gun, electric, like a hot air, like a what you call it, like a blow dryer heat gun. I've got one that attaches to my soldering iron solder station with a blower on it. Would probably be a much better way to go about doing this. It's got blackened hands, battle scars. You know, like stick that in a block of ice or something to rapid cool it. Maybe that would help with getting it to shrink down if we cool it fast. Oh, that definitely that definitely got it in a little bit tighter. That's for sure. He's definitely toasted though, man. He had a close encounter with his ordnance disposal. Alright, let's get our camera off the tripod and take a peek at him. Yeah, he's got some burnt hot dogs back there for fingers. But I think we got his hand a little bit tighter. Yeah, it's definitely a lot tighter. But still pretty loose on the wheel. But it'll be easier to glue. So I just need to get some epoxy to put that on there, boys and girls. That's not going to be in this video. You guys and gals can use your imagination. But the next time you see it, we'll have that hand epoxied on there. And he'll have some burnt knuckles possibly, but hey, you know, he's battle-hardened. A battle-hardened soldier. So, yeah, I guess we'll, next time you see it, if you see him out on the track with burnt knuckles, you'll know his hand is glued to the wheel and we're all good to go. But otherwise, I think we're good to go right now, as it is. So, unbeknownst to you, boys and girls out there, I have taken this vehicle out on the adventure course midway through this video. So, while we started out the video at the beginning of the video the other day, I was up all night, pulled an all-nighter, working on the vehicle, or working on editing the first run video on this vehicle, which was out in the snow. So that was Thursday night. I was up all night editing Thursday into Friday morning. And then Friday morning got a bug up my butt after I was done editing about putting a driver figure in here. And started working on that, and I worked on that till about 11 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the day was just turning out to be beautiful. It was an absolutely gorgeous day on Friday. Totally gorgeous. So I grabbed the backpack leaf blower, the old 80cc backpack, and threw a couple gallons of gas in her, and spent about 4.5 or 5 hours a time blowing off the adventure course and getting all the leaves off the course. And then took this thing out for its first run in the dirt on the adventure course. And it did pretty good. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it did all right. It definitely did all right. There's no doubt about it. Don't know if you guys noticed all the dirt on the tires. And dirt here and there on various parts of the body leftovers from that little bit of nonsense. And I actually rolled it over twice, boys and girls. I rolled the Jeep over twice, and our windshield is still intact. So a little bit tougher than I thought with all that. So we had our driver figure in there on that run with all our counterbalance weight on the other side. Once again, put our machine gun in here as well, our M16. Use a little bit of double-sided tape on the back half of the stock over here to adhere it to the side of the body. And then I just got the front half just kind of wedged in between the mirror and the body over there. Not the most ideal spot for an M16, but nice and handy, easy for the guy to reach if he needs it in a hurry. Not exactly the best place to keep an M16 out of the elements, that's for darn sure. Especially in the Vietnam era, that would have been real trouble, keeping that thing out in the dirt like that. Or off on the side. So there we go, boys and girls. We got our driver installed. I think we're at a holding point right at the moment. We put Loctite on the steering wheel, or I put some Loctite on the steering wheel. So it's all locked down and ready to go. It's not going to go anywhere. Only thing that we need to do is just put a little bit of epoxy on our driver's hand to make sure that that works. But I think right now, let's go ahead here, plug the battery back in, plug this thing back in, and see if this is going to break loose. I put red Loctite on here. So let's see if that's going to break loose or if it's going to hold up with just our driver's hand sitting on it. And then we'll know a little bit more about putting glue on it. Otherwise, we might have to do some serious surgery here and replace this plastic rod with a metal link and screw our steering wheel directly down to it. Screw it and glue it directly to a metal link, and then come up with a more solid way to run that from the bottom of the steering stem over to the servo, so it's more of a solid hookup over there as well. It just has a bent rod going from the servo horn, like a 1-inch distance, over to another small servo horn that's on the bottom of the steering stem. So I'm not too sure how that hooks up, if that servo horn is attached via a spline and a screw on the bottom of the steering stem, or if it's just attached with the screw and no spline. So not too sure how that's how that's set up down there. Either way, it's plastic, so it's not going to hold up very well. All right, let's get our camera in a tripod, fire this baby up, and see if that thing's going to hold up or not. All right, well, we've got our vehicle keyed on. We've got our driver's hand resting on the steering wheel right by one of these little cross members down here. So that might catch his thumb on the way up. We'll see. The front wheels are elevated on the vehicle, sitting on a couple tire foams, so trying to lessen the drag. The steering wheel is just free spinning in his hand and moving his shoulder okay. So I think we'll be okay with some glue on here, boys and girls. All we need to do is put some epoxy on here of some sort. I don't have any epoxy right now. And I'm going to go into town and upload this video later on today. So I'll go pick up some epoxy when I go. And we're just going to call our video a done deal at the moment, since I don't have any epoxy on hand. But I think the steering wheel is going to hold up just fine. I didn't use any double-sided tape to put our other hand on top of the shift lever. I'm just going to leave it as it is, sitting right there. It seems to sit on the shift lever okay. It's not really going anywhere. But we definitely need a little bit of epoxy in between our guy's hand and the steering wheel. But I think our steering wheel is going to hold up okay. Because our shoulder, once again, is pretty loose, being hooked up with a spring. So I think our steering wheel will be fine. Yeah, we should be good. We just need to put a bit of glue on that, and we'll be all good. Alright, so there we go. I think that is a done deal on our project. Once again, we got our driver sitting as low as we can possibly get him to sit in here. He's not going to sit down any lower than this. His butt is literally sitting on the body. So he can't get any lower than that right now. We took a whole bunch of meat out of the back of his legs. You know, we took all that meat out of there. So, I mean, huge gap right there between where we took the meat out of the back of his legs. Let's get our camera off the tripod. Getting in closer here. Once again, we took a huge chunk of meat out of his legs down here so he could clear the seat. So obviously sitting down much further just with that big chunk right there, let alone how much meat we shaved off his backside, off his gluteus maximus. I mean, we took about this much plastic easily a 1/4 inch, if not more, off the back of his butt, or the bottom of his butt. So we got him sitting down lower. If we look at the beginning of the video, his eyes are actually above the windshield. So we kind of got his eyes sitting just below the windshield. He might actually be just staring at this beam right here. So we got him to sit a little bit lower. But I don't think we can get him to sit much lower than that, other than heating up his body to an extreme with a heat gun and just trying to squish him and just trying to squish his whole body. And then he's just not going to look right. once again. So, Burt Knuckles McGee here, old hot dog hands. I think he's going to have to do the way he is. Once again, I think we got our steering wheel held up okay. We put some red Loctite on there. It's holding up good so far. And we just need a little bit of epoxy to put on his hand, and she's a done deal. So that is going to do it, boys and girls. Very much appreciated for y'all sticking around and watching the video, our little install here on our driver figure. Questions or comments are always welcome. Always welcome for the questions and comments. I love talking to you guys and gals out there. I love being able to help you out when I can, when I'm able. Certainly love helping you guys out when I'm able. There's no doubt about that. So that's going to do it, boys and girls. Very much appreciated once again for y'all sticking around and watching the video. Questions and comments, once again, are always welcome. And we will see you all on the next one. Thanks again.